Hello ladies and gentlemen, it is I, Lunar, and welcome to another smashing video. Today I'll be talking about a little game I've been playing called Ravenfield, and if you don't know what the hell this is, it's a full-fledged sandbox FPS akin to Garryspawn, where you can download and play around with all kinds of mods to make Ravenfield the perfect FPS of your dreams. So in other words, let your imagination run wild, and it's been kept alive by the modding community for a good long while, with some of the best mods ever released for the game. Looking for Star Wars? There's plenty of that here. Warhammer 40k? We've got you covered. Fucking anime girls and Hatsune Miku? Yep, that's here too. However, even with all these amazing things Ravenfield has going for it, it's severely lackluster in quite a few areas, which is why I'm here to talk about them and how these aspects can be salvaged and improved upon. Now, I just want to get out a few notes and make them something perfectly clear. Firstly, I'm aware that this is only one developer working on this game, so I just want to assure him that I'm not trying to be harsh, nor am I nagging him to update the game. Second, I'm playing the latest beta build for Ravenfield, that of course being EA32, featuring a lot of quality of life improvements that I'm more than glad are finally in the game. So that's something I'm admittedly not going to delve too much into. Last, but not least, these are my personal suggestions on what to improve in the future. So, without further ado, let's deploy. The first major subject I'm going to talk about is the Conquest mode, as it is easily the most bare-bones mode in the whole game. What's supposed to be a fun game mode akin to Star Wars Battlefront 2 with hours of playtime boils down to researching one dominant weapon or so, and it's mostly smooth sailing from there. That's the amount of depth this game mode has, and it feels like I'm playing it for about a half hour, or in other words, little to no depth at all. Worse yet, in the EA32 build, at least at the time of this recording, neither team gets any vehicles even if you research them like you would for weapons, and it just makes battles feel boring as a result. Though I guess in that case, if you're looking for boots on the ground infantry combat, this mode delivers in spades. Jokes aside, this mode leaves much to be desired, and honestly, that's a real shame because I feel like it has a lot of potential to be the best mode in the game. So here are some things I'm going to propose to be added or fixed to make it even better. Add weapon and vehicle upgrades. A new feature that could be added are upgrades for weapons and vehicles, such as stronger armor, faster movement, higher ammo capacity, reduced cooldown, better damage, and increased range to name a few. Of course, not everything needs to have an upgrade attached to it, since I feel some weapons and vehicles could be game-breaking because of it, but this would otherwise add some depth to a mode that, unfortunately, has none to begin with. Team selection. I think it's pretty obvious why this should be a feature. Now for these next two suggestions, I will admit that they are extremely complicated, but allow me to explain myself here. Conquest Customizer. Players can customize how they want their Conquest playthrough to go, much like customizing the board layout to toggling what can be researched. For the board, you can place around maps wherever you want and set up each team home based on any of your desire. You can also set up to 4 maps that can spawn units for the teams, along with the amount of resources per turn you can acquire. If mod support is ever integrated into Conquest though, players could choose what mods they want, making it more versatile than ever. Research toggle can also be done by toggling each individual weapon and vehicle, or they could disable it entirely, giving both teams all of each except for upgrades. And finally, for the most complicated of them all, a complete rework of this mode. I'm gonna just delve into some issues and explain myself from there. Firstly, there's this bulge of maps that honestly just feels really weirdly positioned, as if they're a bit out of the way despite giving you resources upon capturing them. What I feel should be done with the board is to orient the maps in a circular fashion to allow players to spread their forces out to cover as much ground as possible, all the while being evenly matched in terms of control. Another mechanic that could be added is choosing increased research or money when capturing certain bases to allow you some strategy. Do you want more research to gain more vehicles and weapons, or do you want more battalions on the field to gain more ground, along with using coins to buy some research? This would give the players some choice on how they want to approach their battles, and would add a risk versus reward factor, as your enemies will gain those benefits if they capture that map. To take a cue from Star Wars Battlefront, once you've conquered all of the maps on the board, you'll be able to lay siege to the enemy's home base, where you have to fight them with a set number of battalions regardless if either team has any units on that space. This of course will mean you can't auto-resolve like most other maps, but that's a trade-off I'll gladly accept for the sake of keeping this mode interesting. And that covers Conquest mode. Needless to say, it really needs some work, and I think these ideas would make it a whole lot better, eliminating my issues with this mode altogether. Though admittedly, I kind of understand why the developer hasn't worked on it much. He's probably focused on refining some aspects to make the game as balanced and fun as possible. Smaller aspects of that. Anyways, time to move on to another problem I have with Ravenfield, and that's its in-game level editor. Just hear me out here. I'm fully aware people have been able to do some really cool things with this editor, resulting in some amazing levels that stand out. Hell, they're so good you could tell me they were made with the mod tools and I'd believe you. But it's not about what this level editor is capable of. Rather, it's what you're working with is my main problem. And yes, I did just mention that the mod tools exist for if you want more advanced ways to make maps. But I feel the in-game editor needs a little bit more attention, so here are some additions and improvements that could make it even better. Starting off, the addition of an undo and redo button. I honestly don't get why this isn't a thing, because makers are prone to making mistakes, so the added convenience of an undo and redo button would greatly reduce the issue in hand. More brush tools. Editing terrain honestly feels limited with the few brushes you have, so here are some that allow for better level making, such as, but not limited to, rough/bumpy, rough subterranean, which will be useful in making mountainous landscapes or rocky hillsides. Elevate will elevate the terrain depending on the brush's position on the Z-axis, useful if you want to make plateaus or have a high rise as a theme for your level. Flood fills a hole with water, making it useful if you want an easier way to make lakes or rivers and hate using the water cube so much. Tunnel. Hate that you have no reliable way of making caves without having to use the in-game assets or the mod tools? This brush type will be perfect for anyone who wants an actual cave system as seen in Canyon and Citadel. And finally, for just one major fix, the intensity slider for flatten. I don't really get how this doesn't work as intended like with Rise and Smooth, where the more intense it is, well, you get my idea. The way I feel this issue could be rectified is for the intensity to affect how high or smooth the flattening will be. So yeah, in other words, don't make it instantaneous as if the slider is at 100. More templates. More example biomes like tundras, grass fields, and mountains would really benefit to kickstart some ideas for what the maker wants their level to be like. Height measurements, to help the players see how high their terrain is so they can get a desirable perspective on the level. This will be very helpful if you want a certain height limit for your map. Duplicate mode. Want to save time on building the same buildings over and over again? This mode will literally eliminate the tedium of recreating buildings again and again. Skybox editor. Some more options and toggles for the skybox would be great to have if makers want some atmosphere for their level. Toggles could include clouds, rain, snow, etc., and the color of the sky could also be changed too. A prefab maker. This would be very useful in allowing makers to create and save prefabs, sparing them the hassle of making each building again from scratch. And yes, I know that there are prefabs on the Discord server, which thank goodness for all those people taking time to make them, but for the in-game editor, prefabs would be a godsend. All the game needs is a prefab folder within the files, and it'll be good to go. And finally, for the last addition to the level editor, battlefield zones. Taking another cue, this time from Halo's Forge mode, the editor can have different types of zones, such as a kill barrier, solid barrier, hazard barrier, effect zone, and respawn zone. Allow me to break these down for you all. Kill barrier. It does exactly as it sounds and would be more than useful to prevent bots and players from getting stuck in areas they shouldn't. It would also be great to have for maps that are high in the clouds or whatever, killing the player for falling to their death. Solid barrier. For if you want to prevent anyone from entering any area, solid barriers would make for a good way to make map barriers for if anyone wants some nice background scenery to look at, or feel as though they want to make maze levels. That is, if you're demented enough. Hazard zone. This will damage you if you enter the boundary, which is great for any kind of scenario like radiation or poison gas. Hell, even soft kill barriers if kill barriers themselves are too extreme. Effect zone. Possesses all kinds of wacky effects that you can initiate, such as low gravity, speed changes, invisibility, you get the picture. This would just be a fun little feature to have if you want a whole lot of fun and silly shit going on in your battles. And finally, a safe zone, or respawn zone if you'd rather. This could work as a safeguard to prevent spawn killing at an enemy's base, granting them invincibility, yet the players cannot attack the enemy until they leave the zone. This would also help with the issue of enemies spawning on top of the player when capturing a flag, since this will serve as another respawn zone. And that's all I've got for the in-game editor. I try not to go too far off the rails with my ideas because, again, it's only one developer like I mentioned, so I imagine he'll take things slow and implement some of these over time. If he chooses. But perhaps maybe you can come up with something I haven't in this video. I might actually make a video on all of your suggestions on how to improve Ravenfield as well, whether it be through the editor, the Conquest mode, or just general gameplay stuff. Otherwise, however, that's pretty much all I wanted to discuss about Ravenfield, really. I love this game so much, and I only made this video because I want this game to get even better. Slowly but surely though, it's been getting better, especially with the EA32 build. So if you love sandbox FPSs like Garry's Mod or the idea of UGC-centric games where your only limit is your imagination, I would highly recommend you try this out, especially with all the amazing mods I play around with. Maybe I might actually make a video on my biggest recommendations on how you should play Ravenfield. Or not, it's your choice after all. With all that said and done, however, I bid you all adieu, farewell, have yourself a lovely day, hope you're playing Ravenfield right now, and until next time, this is Lunar signing out. See you later, everybody, and thanks for watching. Don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, I'm celebrating the 15th anniversary of this YouTube channel by doing a full-on Q&A around the 30th of September. So if you haven't already seen this post, I'll have a link to it in the description below. You can comment your 3 questions there, and you'll have a chance to be featured in the video itself. The deadline is September 20th, so please make sure you get your questions in as soon as possible.